Okay, I've been meaning to make this video since around the time Sonic 3 came out, but I just didn't get around to it, and I moved on to other things. But I've decided I'm going to actually make it now because I feel like I'm one of the few people who actually feels this way about Sonic 3. And the movie is still kind of new, so people are still kind of in their honeymoon thing of like, oh, I fucking love this movie! It's so good! But it's not good. You're fucking wrong, and I hate you. Okay, that's me being extreme, but like, I do still like this movie. Well, I wouldn't say like, it's fine, but I have quite a few complaints. This movie just has quite a few issues that hold it back from being as good as it could have. It's really frustrating because I can literally see the framework of something that could have been so much better, but there's just they made so many decisions that just do not work for me. My main issues with the movie are about how Shadow, Maria, and Gerald are handled. I will first praise something I think they did well with Shadow here, which is making him fully aware of what he's doing in his plot for revenge. Adventure 2 has this whole thing where Gerald alters his memories to make Shadow enact his revenge plot for him, which works well for that game, but it wouldn't have really worked well for this movie. Knuckles was just an antagonist in the last movie, and his motivation is very similar, where he lost people and he's, oh, I'm gonna get the Master Emerald and I'm gonna avenge them. That's kind of similar to Shadow. Do you see it? Do you see it? Like, if they did the exact same plot point where Gerald turns on him in place of Robotnik, and like how he turned on Knuckles, and it would just be the exact same thing. But again, it's generally stronger how they handle, like in movie 3, Shadow's pain, and his pain is focused on much more than with Knuckles, but it's still just doing villains with a very similar motivation, like back to back in a movie franchise. That is quite strange. There are scenes in the third act of both of these movies where Sonic sits and talks Knuckles or Shadow out of what they are doing, and the scenes are staged like exactly the same. They're both sitting down, they're talking to each other like, oh man, you can change, you can do better, you can make a difference, you can make it right, you can make it better, we don't have to fight. And then after he Steven Universes, he goes and he holds out his hand for both of them. That it is staged, like both scenes are staged exactly the same. How did they think this was a good idea to do two movies where they do the exact same movie, the exact same villain? What were they thinking? And actually, now that I think about it, Sonic goes off on his own after someone he cares about is badly injured in both movies. In Sonic 2, it's Tails, and in Sonic 3, it's Tom. Again, it's a thing where Sonic 3 definitely focuses on it more for the tone and dramatizes it more, but in ways the movie kind of just feels like a stronger version of Sonic 2. Thematically, these movies are just nearly exactly the same. Shadow and Knuckles have differences in terms of personality, but they serve the same purpose in the plot. And beyond the antagonists in the story, the movies also give Sonic like the same arc, which I have kind of been alluding to throughout the video so far. Tom says Sonic's gonna have to make the right choice.
You're gonna make the right choice when it matters the most.
This is very similar to what he says to Sonic on the boat in Sonic 2.
There will come a time when your powers will be needed, but you don't choose that moment. That moment chooses you.
Both movies are basically just stories of Sonic being challenged in his heroism by a threat he doesn't know how to deal with that then hurts his family. He then needs to learn to forgive the threat and mature, even though this has happened twice in a row now, and it did not stick the first time. Like, it really is just the same goddamn movie. And actually, after I initially saw the Shadow post-credit scene in Sonic 2, I was actually worried about this exact thing, where I was like, oh man, I really hope that they don't just do like the same villain again. That would be really weird. I hope they can do this right. And my fears were kind of just proven right, but I honestly kind of don't care that much, considering I don't really like Sonic 2 anymore after rewatch. Going into why I don't like Sonic 2 is another can of worms, but basically the main thing is it's just not funny. It's not very funny.
Like Vin Diesel and The Rock.
And that's actually not talking about the wedding scene. That is actually one of the funniest scenes in the movie to me. But I am also a person who watched the first Sonic movie like 15 times because I really thought it was very funny, and it was just a very much a comfort movie for me. So take that as you will. And anyway, a movie that uses 2's ideas and just makes them better isn't really a bad thing, because again, I just don't care. But when you actually care, it's probably a bad thing. I am very glad that Sonic 4 seemingly can't do the same plot with Metal. Hopefully. Alright, back to actually talking about what I don't like in Shadow's story in 3 specifically again. I think a lot of what makes Shadow's story so engaging was stripped away in this movie, and that makes those basically Knuckles' story in Sonic 2 comparisons especially applicable to this version of the character. I really do not like him just being an alien in this movie. It's just like the worst decision they could have made. I've seen people defending this as streamlining the character for the movie, but all this does is strip Shadow of his unique complexity in the Sonic universe. In isolation, Shadow being an alien isn't a big deal, but when you add Maria and Gerald into the mix, this fucks everything up, and Maria and Gerald are kinda just like the entire core of Shadow's story. Maria is kind of the root of the fucking things up, because Maria having no illness at all is genuinely a baffling change. Also, I think it's like kinda ableist maybe? I've seen people defend this change as, oh, Maria is a normal child in this universe, which makes her death more tragic. And I think that's kinda just a really weird way of thinking. It's like they view Maria as a lesser person because she has a disease, and now that she doesn't, her death is more tragic because she had a more typical life. If in an adaptation they just so happen to remove a disabled trait from a character, which I don't think you should be doing, but if it does happen and that character dies in that piece of media, I don't think you should be feeling less bad for them because they weren't disabled in the adaptation. That's kind of weird as shit. I don't know why people are like this. This change is just always going to be weird as hell to me. Yes, her disease in the games is being kept in check by space's lower gravity, so they were gonna have to change some things, but just completely removing it from the character is so strange. This change also wipes out Gerald's entire motivation for working on Project Shadow. Now in the movie, Shadow is just a source of power that Gunn wants to use. Gunn also wanted to use Shadow as a weapon in the games, but now that is the only thing anyone wants to use him for because Maria no longer has her illness. This just waters down the story so much. Gerald in the games is a desperate man being stretched to his limit under pressure by Gunn constantly. But due to the love for his granddaughter, he continues to work on Shadow in the hopes all of the moral sacrifices he's made are worth it in the end to cure her. The movie just makes him part of that corrupt system that he works against in the game canon. It is so much more generic and entirely less interesting. Just because it's more to exposition dump doesn't mean they should have changed it. The talk with Commander Walters is already like a 2-minute long exposition dump anyway. Just go all in. Or do another thing that I'll mention later. I have ideas. Ooh, are you excited? Are you excited? Are you excited? I'm gonna rewrite the movie later in the video. This is the foreshadowing. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? Can you believe it? And in the other flashbacks spread throughout the movie, you don't even see Gerald in them. Well, aside from the one where Maria gets killed, so you just don't see at all how he cared for her. You're just told he did. Gerald is really just always evil as far as the audience is concerned. It's really only perceived that he was pushed to his limit by the death of Maria, not that he was some good person beforehand. You wanted nuance in your funny Sonic movie? Okay, look, we replaced it with something so much better. 2 funny Eggmen, and they run around, and they dance, and they do funny things, and it's funny because we're purposely sabotaging our story for the funny! The fact that they even do this whole thing where it's like, oh, it's 2 Jim Carreys, they act the exact same. He's kind of missing the whole point of Gerald too, because he's interesting because he's like a kind-hearted man, and you weren't expecting someone related to Dr. Robotnik to be like that. Obviously later he's not so kind. He wants to blow up the Earth, but you know it's a little crazy because at first you're like, whoa, is there a good guy related to Eggman? Who could have thought? Every decision made about Shadow's backstory is just incredibly short-sighted, and I don't get how no one saw how much they were shooting themselves in the foot. Marie and Gerald are the very core of Shadow's story, and they fucked up nearly everything involving them. Now, some people might perceive this as me just wanting a 100% accurate adaptation of Sonic Adventure 2 with no deviations, but that's not what I want at all. Sonic Adventure 2 is a nearly 25-year-old game and has not aged very well.
What was that all about?
This is especially apparent in the area of cutscenes, where, you know, the story is told. Voice direction is weird for many lines.
Hey, where you going?
Move aside, Knuckles.
Audio mixing is all over the place.
Yeah, but then again, that's not the whole story, is it?
And a lot of the cutscenes are done with this shitty looking mocap that makes the characters look like they're humans in mascot costumes in this weird ass uncanny valley.
Why did I just get so loud for that word in specific? It was not that serious.
The story of the game deserves to be told again with the advances of technology in modern times. I want it to be done true justice, and I was hoping that Sonic 3 would give me that. I wanted an adaptation that takes the elements of the story, improves on what worked, and makes changes where necessary to fit the movieverse. But fitting the movieverse to them, I guess, meant not telling the story faithfully really at all. They just went too far, and took out what I actually love about the original story. The movie isn't bad, as I've said, but it just feels like a hollow version of what could have been. This movie's take on Shadow kinda just reminds me of Insomniac Venom in Spider-Man 2, where he just looks like Venom, but every other thing about him is nothing like Venom. Like, it's not to the same extent, because Shadow still mostly acts like Shadow in movie 3, but they still take out mostly everything that makes him compelling. You know what? I'm just gonna put that one clip from Godzilla Mendoza's video on Spider-Man 2 here, because it basically perfectly describes my feelings, and what I was going to be saying next would just be restating basically this quote, but in a worse way.
You got the very basic traits, right? But like, every imaginable other detail that made him special or cool is wrong. It's a new take, though! It's a new take where the cool parts are gone. That's the new take. That's what's new about it, is we took the cool stuff out.
You're welcome, man, for the shout out. I know you're really struggling for subscribers. In return for this excellent shout out, take back that stupid fucking thing that you said about the sweatpants needle drop in Moon Girl. That is the dumbest fucking complaint I've ever heard in my life about that show. What the fuck is wrong?
Every emotional beat with Elektra is ruined by playing an Evanescence song and an example of one of the most inappropriate needle drops in a superhero adaptation until Sweatpants and Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur.
Hashtag my day wearing your girl, my daycare, and I'm born rich. Life ain't.
I'm sorry, I just need to include this in this video. This is completely besides the point. I'm just so upset. Why did he say this? This is the stupidest complaint I think I've ever heard anyone say about Moon Girl ever, and that's literally my favorite show. This is completely besides the point. I'm just so fucking pissed off. Why the fuck would you say this? This is the dumbest complaint of all time. The whole point of the scene, it's synced to music, and it's a cool song. How is this unfitting? I'm so pissed off. I'm speaking about this way too long. What the fuck? It's just Moon Girl. Moon Girl.
2 whole days without for a good run, Mr. Squidward.
Oh, okay. Now back to actually talking about the movie, which is the point of the video. What makes this even more frustrating is that genuinely the movie, like I said before, is only a few tweaks away from being more in line with what I would have wanted. So I'm gonna do that now. Here is Tarium's super awesome ideas on how to rewrite Sonic 3 to be better and stuff. To start, I do not understand why Commander Walters is even telling Team Sonic the truth in that scene at the Chow Garden. In Sonic 2, he captures Sonic and Tails and only stops fighting them when he realizes Robotnik is alive. He doesn't actually change his ways there, it's more just a thing he does begrudgingly. I think he realizes that if there's a threat, he can use Sonic and friends, but I don't think he would ever actually trust or sympathize with them like he does here. In fact, when I was watching this movie the first time in theaters, I was thinking that parts of his story here were lies to mislead them, because it didn't match with Shadow's lore, but apparently this was just him actually explaining these things because they changed the lore. I explained already, I don't care that they changed the lore. They could change the lore, it's just that the lore that they changed it makes it worse. I really thought there was some movie exclusive reason that he could be hiding Shadow as a man-made life form, but I actually think that him lying about that to cover up the intricacies of Shadow's story to Sonic could be interesting, so I'm gonna use that in my made-up better version of this movie. The scene would just be far more interesting if Commander Walters was telling them a partial truth of Shadow's story, because he's still a corrupt government official who doesn't trust these aliens with confidential information. It'd be kind of interesting if he just fucks everyone over because he can't reveal all this stuff because of his prejudice against aliens, and then he dies and is attacked, and now the only person he can put his trust into is Sonic. and he can't tell him any information before he croaks. Also, after Commander Walters gives him the card, Sonic literally says,
Until we get more information, we're not trusting anyone.
So why do they even believe him in the first place? Why do they trust him? I don't understand. They literally captured them before. Why do they trust this guy? Why? What are they doing? Are they stupid?
Also, in this version of the story, he would not make any mention of an accident at the government lab. Just to make that clear, this is going to be important later.
Now, a little after the Chow Garden scene, we see Shadow's extended flashback about Maria. So I'm gonna, like, say what I would do to fit Maria's illness and stuff into the scene. And also make other changes I think would make it better. Wow. First of all, Maria is obviously at the base now because she's sick, so maybe she's in a wheelchair instead of skating around. And they say Gerald has brought her there due to her worsening condition. Maria is shown to be visibly upset at the mention of her terminal disease. She does not like to think about it, I think. I think that would be cool to include. I think it gives her a little bit more, like, depth. Like, you don't have to just say, like, oh, she's upset because the disease makes her, she's upset about it. I think that little layer of, like, oh, she looks upset when they mention it, that could be cool. That could be cool. But this movie doesn't know anything about show, don't tell. Okay, not that they don't know anything about showing, not telling. It's just like this one scene near the end just irrationally pisses me off. There's probably other examples like this, but like it's not the entire movie. I'll get back to that one scene later. It's just it really pisses me off. Oh, also the stuff with her like looking sad in the wheelchair, that's not like her whole personality. She's still like the beam of light sort of thing into people's lives that she's usually described as. It's just like she got sad. Whoa. Pretty much everything stays the same except she's in a wheelchair until the montage to that Beatles song. Well, there's this shot in the original montage where Shadow is like hooked up to all these like medical things or whatever, I don't know. He's getting tested, and I think it would be cool if Maria is getting tested on across the room from him and they like smile at each other, showing that they're relating and bonding over each other's less than ideal circumstances. I don't know, I like the idea of them bonding over their shared test, because you don't really see that in the games. I think just them having that scene there, that's a good place to plant that. Okay, yeah, I've had that idea since I first saw that scene. You do not know how much I've been hankering to make this video. I have so many ideas. This movie is so close to being good. Please, I just want to fix it. The scene then continues most of the same, just with the wheelchair, until they go out and sit under the stars. In this version, the events of that scene are shuffled around. Maria's condition has worsened to the point where she has to be monitored in a hospital bed a lot. Shadow walks to visit her, and as he does, gets stares of fear and hatred from researchers and doctors letting him into her room. Shadow and Maria talk for a little about her worsening condition and Shadow's hatred of how he's treated. The Shadow part is similar to the scene like where he's talking about the monster movie. That'll probably be included in this part. Then Gerald walks in the room and sits Shadow down. Okay, so I originally had a section here where I was doing like voice lines for Gerald and going through like a script of like playing out like what I feel like the scene would be like, but it was kind of just really cringy to listen to, and it's just easier for me to like give a basic synopsis of what would happen. So yeah, I'm gonna do that. The gist of it was that Gerald was like convincing Shadow to like continue going under testing because he reveals that he can use Shadow's chaos energy to like cure Maria. So he's like, oh man, I know it must really suck for you to go through all this testing, but I just need you to know that like I'm doing this all for her. If I wouldn't be putting you through this if it wasn't for Maria. So could you please keep going, because you know, like, I know you and Maria, you guys are like tight and stuff. So like, you know, you gotta keep hanging on, bro. And then Shadow agreed to like keep going for Maria, and then like they went up and go up to like the under the stars scene. Whoa. They have a different conversation about how Maria is grateful for what Shadow is doing for him. He responds,
I don't know what I'd do without you.
now that Maria has her illness as well, it's kind of a red herring for the audience of not knowing what exactly happened to her that Gerald and Shadow would want to punish them. To the audience unfamiliar, they may think that Gunn somehow sabotaged Gerald's research to prevent her from surviving, only to be stunned at the true cruelty of what happened to her. Now when Sonic's like team and Robotnik's team go and explore the abandoned facility, they discover some files or something about how Shadow is a man-made life form, along with the discovery of Shadow having a family, Maria or whatever. I don't know. So something like that. There might be plot holes. I don't know. If there's junk laying around to explain how Sonic doesn't know something because he didn't get the whole truth from Commander Walters, either Commander Walters told the truth there on that specific thing, or he found some random file in this scene. I don't feel like putting in the effort to go and look specifically what doesn't line up. I don't care. I just want you to get the idea. And now, Gerald shows up. You may be thinking, with all of my complaining, that I'm going to make him this serious, depressed man, but I am actually not. Him acting like Eggman actually works really well with what they set up later in the movie. Gerald is manipulating Eggman to work with him through acting like the father he never had. And like Eggman, because Eggman's ideal father figure would just be him again because he's a narcissist. So now in the third act, when Gerald reveals his true plan, his whole demeanor should shift. He reveals that he was using Eggman for his technology, since he was locked away for 50 years and didn't have access to his tech. This is kind of implied in the movie, but in the scene, he doesn't really, reveal this to Robotnik. He just kind of says, "Oh, you're no Maria," and moves on. Why didn't they just make it clear he was manipulating him? Why did he even seek him out in the first place? And after that, he gives his whole speech about burning it all down. And then after that, he actually stays unhinged and insane until he dies. The fight between the Robotniks is now between a Gerald who's been completely ravaged by a world he believes isn't worthy of existence for what it's done to him and the people he loves, and Eggman, who has lost all respect for his grandfather and sees him as an incompetent man who doesn't have the will to enact his upon the earth for what it's done to him and rule it. His grandfather is just taking the easy way out by destroying it instead. There's two lines that kind of reference this sort of thing that I just said in the original script, but I think that would be interesting if that was more of the actual central conflict of what was going on. Well, it is the central conflict of what's going on in between them, but it's not really focused on because they're just...
I will not try to stop.
And it will not be cut back to as much as the actual movie between the Super Sonic and Super Shadow stuff, because that's really dumb. It's not the main conflict. Why is there more screen time dedicated to it? That is very stupid. I got ahead of myself on the Robotnik stuff because I felt it was a better format to just talk about all that there, so I skipped over the Maria death scene, which I really wouldn't change much about, but I do still have some slight nitpicks that don't matter as much as the other stuff I've been talking about, but I'd still change them. The gun soldier actually shoots her straight on now, instead of hitting the weird fuel source that instead blows her up. It lessens the impact of what's happening and is just weaker. There is the potential that this one is to get around censorship for the age rating, but they still show the death of Maria by a fade to white or black in multiple pieces of media at an E age rating, even in Shadow Generation.
They took the lives of Gerald and Maria.
So, the movie, they really should have just had a gun firing sound effect and a fade to white. Also, Commander Walters shouldn't be trying to stop them in the movie. It's this weird extension of this narrative that they were trying to push, that Commander Walters was one of the good gun agents.
Commander Walters.
It reminds me of in other movies where they make a potentially political statement about cops or the government, so they need to put in the one good cop so they can say, "Oh guys, it's not all cops." And yeah, I'm sure there's cops who probably went in with good intentions, but the system is corrupt and they are working within it. The not all cops stuff is just defending the unjust system by providing the out that this is more on a personal level of the good and bad cops and not the system itself.
I'm getting a little too woke here, but ACAB.
And now, to conclude, I have one very small nitpick. You also may recall this was the one scene I said I was gonna bitch about earlier. That one scene where Sonic and Shadow are on the moon and Super Sonic is about to kill Shadow, they shouldn't have had that flash to the scene at the beginning of the movie where Tom is talking to Sonic. The scene is stronger without that, and it just comes off as super handholdy to the audience.
This is not who I am.
I get it's a kid's movie, but kids are smarter than that. They can get this stuff, and the scene still makes sense whether or not the kid gets the reoccurring theme of "in your heart," with characters pointing there throughout the movie. Imagine if in that one scene with Shadow and Maria where she points there, it just suddenly cuts to the Tom scene so the kids got that it was meant to be connected. Obviously, it works better with the Supersonic scene because in the narrative, Sonic is remembering it, but I think it should have just been a cool thing that if you had a keen eye, you would pick up on. Whatever, this one isn't that important. I just still wanted to mention it. So, yeah, that's what I didn't like about Sonic Movie 3 and how I'd implement my critiques into the movie. I hope you can kind of see what I mean by it being a few tweaks away from being more of what I would have wanted. This may seem super nitpicky to some people, but even though this only impacts a few scenes, it has long-stretching impacts across the narrative. Yeah, I just think my changes make the story more interesting and a lot less flat. Jeff Fowler, if you're seeing this, it's probably too late for Sonic 4, but hire me for Sonic 5. I can make your dog shit movie into an Oscar winner. Please, I need this. Anyway, I can definitely see how people still enjoy it. Heck, I'd still say it's even like a 5 or 6 out of 10 decently fun movie for me. But it's just really frustrating that I can see how it could have been much better. So clearly in my head, I've said this before, but yeah, even if you don't agree with me, I hope you can at least understand where I'm coming from. Thank you for tuning into the Tabrium. I shall be tabbering out onto the range and going, and I'm tabriuming. Fuck yeah!